Good Vach, I hope you had a meaningful Shabbat. This week there's a major convention going on in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn. Thousands of shluchim, emissaries of the Alter Rebbe, have come together from all four corners of the world. The 5-day convention is packed with workshops, sessions, and programs aimed at sharing inspiration, ideas, and innovative approaches towards enhancing their holy work in reaching out to Jews in their respective locations. Jews who are yearning for a deeper connection with each other and seeking to understand what it means to be a Jew. Shluchim are always very busy doing their important work, but since October 7, 2023, the demand for connection and meaning has exploded amongst Jews, who never realized the importance of their Jewish identity until the world reminded them. Shluchim are busy living in the present. They have classes to give, people to inspire, programs to arrange, prayer services to organize, meals to prepare, and buildings to build. They have no time to worry about the future. But since I do have the time, I will be discussing in this video what the future has in store for the shluchim. In a nutshell, it would seem that in a very short time, the shluchim will be out of business. We used to say that Mashiach is around the corner. At this point, he has already left that corner and is literally at our door. When he does come, we will all witness the prophetic words of Isaiah in chapter 27, verse 13. V'hoya bayem hahu yitoka b'shefer godel uvo ho'evdim be'eretz Ashur v'hanidochem be'eretz Mitzrayim v'hishtachavu laHashem b'har hakodesh b'Yerushalayim. God Almighty will sound the great shofar to awaken the hearts of Jews who forgot what it means to be Jewish. And all these Jews will stream to the land of Israel to connect with God on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. There will probably be those whose Jewish souls are in a coma. They won't even hear the shofar. These Jews will be awakened by their non-Jewish neighbors. Gentiles will be banging on the doors of their Jewish friends. What in the world are you guys still doing here? Don't you know the Jewish Messiah has come? Pack up your bags. You're coming with us. We actually bought you seats on our flight to Jerusalem tonight. This scenario is exactly what Isaiah is referring to in chapter 49, verse 22. Thus says Hashem, look, I will lift up my hand to the nations and hoist my banner to the peoples. They will bring your sons in their laps and carry your daughters on their shoulders. Isaiah repeats this incredible prophecy again in chapter 60, verse 4. Thus, before you could say Scooby-Doo, there will be no Jews around. They will all be in the land of Israel. The thousands of big, beautiful Chabad houses which dot the entire globe will be empty. There will be nobody to come to holiday services, Hanukkah parties, or Passover seders. Nobody to come to the rabbis or the Rebbitzins' classes, and no Jewish children to enroll in their schools. Some people might be happy to discover that they won't have to deal with teaching and inspiring other people anymore. Happy that they can now spend their day studying Torah and meditating in prayer. If they're not needed, so be it. Now they can finally spend time on their own spiritual growth and focus on their nuclear family, on their children, and on their grandchildren. They will finally have the time to tackle the hundreds of Jewish texts in all areas of Torah and mysticism, which they never had time to study because they were so busy teaching others. They will be able to spend as much time as they wish in deep meditative prayer and song. I know a lot of people that would be quite happy with this arrangement, but not the Rebbe Shluchim. They are doers. It is in their DNA. They need to help others. Taking care of their own spiritual needs and of their immediate family exclusively is not something that would fill their hearts with meaning and their souls with satisfaction. Hold on a minute. Didn't I forget something? No. I did not forget what the Talmud says in Tractate Megillah, page 29a. Rabbi Loza HaKappa Reimer, Asidim Bate Kedesios Ubate Medrasha Shebabavel Sheyikovu Beretz Yisrael. In the future, all the houses of prayer and Torah study halls in the diaspora will be established in the land of Israel. Thus, the shluchim will come to Israel together with their Chabad houses and their communities and continue with business as usual. But I don't think it's so simple. There'll be millions of religious Jews in Israel, untold thousands of them who are proficient in the holy books of Torah, who will be more than happy to study with all the newcomers, as well as to invite them to the Shabbat and holiday meals. There will also be an enormous menu of Torah classes online on every conceivable topic, catering to every level of students and in every language. It doesn't seem to me that there will be a real need in the land of Israel for the many thousands of the Rebbe's emissaries who are now stationed all over the diaspora. They won't be needed to nudge people to come to synagogue or to attend Torah classes. Everybody will be running on their own. Isaiah declares in chapter 2, verse 2, "V'hoya ba'achris hayomim nochin yeh har beis Hashem b'roish hahorim v'nosa mikvois v'nehoru elov kol hagoyim." In days to come, the mount of God's temple will stand firm above all the mountains, exalted over all the hills, and the nations will stream to it. If all the non-Jews will be running, certainly the Jews will be running too. My dear brothers and sisters, shluchim and shluchos of the Rebbe, I have news for you. You're not going anywhere. All the Jews in your communities are leaving, but you are staying put. Your Chabad house is not going anywhere. It will empty out from the Jews you are servicing now. They'll all move to the land of Israel, but you'll be so busy, you will have to hire scores of assistants, if not more. You'll have to double, triple, and quadruple the size of your Chabad houses. We know of about 7 million Jews who are living outside of Israel. There are probably more who don't know they are Jews, but will discover their identity after Mashiach comes. All of these Jews will be moving to the land of Israel. The Jews will settle the entire biblical land of Israel, from the Nile to the Euphrates. It will encompass not only Gaza, Yehuda, and Shomron, but also the entire Lebanon, parts of Turkey, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. But there will also be not millions, but billions of people who will not be moving on a permanent basis to the biblical land of Israel, and they will be flocking to their local Chabad houses. Why? Because of the prophecy in the book of Tzfanya, Zechariah, chapter 3, verse 9, Ki oz ehvoich Elohimim sofa berudo likrechulam b'shem Hashem la'ovdei shchem echad. I will then transform all the nations of the world to speak in a pure tongue, to call out to God, and to serve Him in unison. The Talmud in Brachos 57b interprets this to mean that all the non-Jews will convert to Judaism. But there's a big problem with this, because there are currently about 8 billion non-Jews. If they will all become Jewish, how will they fit in the land of Israel, even in its extended biblical boundaries? Another problem is that the Talmud says in Yevamos 24b that the courts will not accept converts after Mashiach comes. This is based on a verse in Isaiah chapter 54, verse 15, that only those who wish to join the Jewish people, even when they are suffering in exile, are invited to do so. But when things are going fantastic for the Jews after Mashiach comes, it is too late to join them. No pain, no gain. Another question is, the Talmud in Shabbat 32b says that when Mashiach comes, every Jew will have 2,800 non-Jewish servants. This is based on a verse in Zechariah, chapter 8, verse 23. In those days, 10 men from peoples of every tongue will take hold of a Jew by the corner of his garment and say, "Let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you." There are 70 nations, and there will be 10 of each, so that's 700. They will grab onto each of the 4 corners of his tzitzis, so that's 700 times 4, which is 2,800. These numbers actually fit surprisingly well with the current populations of Jews and non-Jews. The verse in Zechariah is only referring to the Jewish population currently living outside of Israel, who are going to Israel when the Messiah comes, and it is onto the 4 corners of their garments that non-Jews are grabbing and asking to join them on their trip to Jerusalem. There are about 7 million Jews living outside of the land of Israel. If we count only the number of males who are required to wear tzitzis, which is from the age of 13, and we count them up to the age of 60, that would be about 3 million. If each one had 2,800 non-Jewish connected to them, it would cover the non-Jewish population of the entire world, which stands at about 8 billion. Now, if they are all servants of the Jews, that means they are not Jews. So how does this fit with what we quoted from the Talmud in Brachot, that all the non-Jews will convert to Judaism? Another simple question about the 2,800 servants is, why in the world will we need so many servants? Actually, we won't need any servants. First, everyone is going to be extremely wealthy, as explicit in the Rambam at the very end of his magnum opus, the Mishnah Torah. If we are wealthy, we can pay for the services we need when we need them. We do not need any servants. In addition, in a very short number of years, we will all have AI-powered robots to take care of all the mundane tasks around the house. So we certainly would have no need and no desire to use human beings. First, because it is not respectful to allow a human being who is created in the image of God to serve us when it is completely unnecessary. And second, because the robots will be doing a much better job, and they can work 24/7 without needing food and bathroom breaks. Even if non-Jews would knock on our doors and offer their services, we would politely refuse their kind offer, and instead we would invite them inside to study Torah with us. So this whole thing about 2,800 servants per person makes no sense. Another issue that needs resolution is that the Talmud in several places says that the converts after Mashiach comes are referred to as gurim, which technically means converts who are pulled along or connected. This is how they are referred to in the Talmud Tractate Avodah Zarah, page 24a and elsewhere. Now, what exactly does this term mean? Rabbi Schneur Zalman, the founder of Chabad, also known as the Alter Rebbe, who passed away in 1812, answers all these questions. He doesn't actually ask any of these questions. He just says something which I am using to answer the questions. Likutei Torah, which is a massive tome of over 600 pages, packed with hundreds of essays dealing with the deepest mystical aspects of Torah. This is the book. The book was first published in Zhytomyr, Ukraine in 1847. In the middle of a long essay, which is talking about a completely different topic, the Alter Rebbe says a couple of words which will answer all our questions. In the section dealing with the topics on the biblical book of Numbers, on page 43a, he says the following: in the future, non-Jews will be connected to the Jews, and they will fulfill the mitzvot that a woman needs to fulfill. Now let me unpack this for you. There are 613 biblical mitzvahs. Of these, a woman is exempt from only 7. 2 of these are the mitzvah of Sukkah and Lulav, which we have to omit from this list, since Zechariah says at the end of his book that after Mashiach comes, even non-Jews will celebrate the festival of Sukkot. So we are left with 5 exemptions. Thus, non-Jews will be over 99% Jewish after Mashiach comes. You might be wondering about the female non-Jewish converts who will be fulfilling 100% of the mitzvahs that Jewish women perform. Thus, why are they only 99% Jewish? Now is not the time to elaborate on this, but for those who are familiar with Talmudic parlance, I will share with you the words of the Gaon of Rogatchow, Rabbi Yosef Rosen, who passed away in 1936. You can find this in the second edition of his commentary on the Rambam on page 20. In a nutshell, there is a difference between a woman who was born Jewish and thus she is essentially mandated to do all the 613. It is only that she has an exemption from 7 of them because they are time-bound and God puts more importance on her responsibilities to her family, and she cannot always stop what she is doing to do a mitzvah. An exemption is not the same as an exclusion. A convert is excluded from these 5, a servant convert, because regarding these 5, he or she is not Jewish. In any case, the whole scenario of the mass conversion of the non-Jews seems to be in contradiction to the statement we quoted earlier from the Talmud in Yevamos, which clearly states that we do not accept converts after the redemption. So how will they convert? The answer is contained in the enigmatic term gerim employed by the sages. The term conveys the following: after Mashiach comes, nobody can convert in their own right anymore, but they can still attach themselves to the Jews. From here on, we will use the term attached converts to refer to this unique form of conversion available after Mashiach comes. This is the meaning of the 2,800 servants. It does not mean literally that they will be our servants. What it does mean is that God is giving them the opportunity to be Jewish, even though they missed the boat by not converting when times were difficult for us. This will be accomplished by God spiritually attaching 2,800 non-Jews to each Jew. This is like the concept of a servant in biblical times. If a non-Jew would wish to become an indentured servant to a Jew, he or she would need to immerse in a mikveh, a ritual pool of water, which would then obligate him or her to keep all the mitzvahs that a Jewish woman is obligated to keep. In a similar vein, after Mashiach comes, God will attach the non-Jews and graft them to the Jewish people. Thus, they resemble the servant in biblical times and will become 99% Jewish. Those non-Jews who wish to become 100% Jewish should do so quickly, because this option will not be available after Mashiach comes. Now, of course, I'm familiar with the prophecies in Isaiah chapter 49:23 and 61:5. V'hoyu melochim oimnayich v'sorisei minikoisayich, apayim eretz yishtachavu loch v'afar raglayich yilachechu. God says, "Look, I will lift up my hand to the nations and hoist my banner to the peoples. Kings will raise you and queens will be your nurses. V'amdu zarim v'rod soinchem uvnei nechor ikorechem v'chormechem. Strangers will rise and pasture your sheep. Foreigners will be your farmers and your vine growers, but you will be called God's priests." But this does not mean that they will be forced to do so like an indentured servant, but rather they will do so with joy and enthusiasm, completely on their own volition. Based on the above, it is obvious that the Rebbe shluchim will be busy like crazy teaching the billions of attached converts how to keep the laws of Shabbat, the laws of kosher, the laws of the holidays, the laws of family purity, etc., etc., etc. Teaching them how to enjoy gefilte fish, kishka, and potato kugel would be totally optional. One last point. I need to correct what I said earlier, that the shluchim will not be able to move to the land of Israel and will need to stay put in their communities in the diaspora all over the world. There is a famous medrash that many of you probably heard of. It is found in the Psikta Rabbasi, in the beginning, and quoted in the famous collection of midrashim called Yalkut Shemaini on Isaiah chapter 60, paragraph number 503. At the very end of the book of Isaiah, God tells the prophet, "On the first day of every month and on every Shabbat, all flesh will come bow down before me, says God." The Medrash wonders, first, how could non-Jews from all over the world come to the city of Jerusalem to encounter God in the Holy Temple? Jerusalem is way too small, and the temple is way too small. Let's do some quick mathematics. In Ezekiel it says that the size of the third temple's campus will be 312 by 317 amos, which translates to about 200,000 square feet, or about 5 football fields. You can squash about 100,000 people in that area. If you allow each of the 8 billion people on earth 1 hour to pray, it would take 9 years for everyone to have a chance to pray in the Holy Temple. Secondly, how will they be able to get from all the distant corners of the world to Jerusalem on such a frequent basis? Note that this medrash was written well over 1,000 years ago. To the first question, the Medrash says that in the future the temple will be as large as the whole city of Jerusalem, and the city of Jerusalem will be as large as the whole land of Israel. In another Midrash it says Jerusalem will be so large as to encompass the city of Damascus in Syria. And the Medrash continues, the land of Israel will encompass the entire world. As far as the second question, how will they get there from so far and so often, the Midrash quotes the verse in Isaiah chapter 60, verse 8. Mi ele ka'ov te'ufeno v'chayonim el arubei sehem. Raise your eyes and look around. They have all gathered to come to you. Who are these who soar like clouds, like doves to their coops? Way before Leonardo da Vinci created designs for flying machines, and way before December 17th, 1903, when Orville Wright became the first person to successfully fly a crewed airplane in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, Isaiah envisioned millions and millions of non-Jews from all corners of the world flying to Israel to encounter God on the Temple Mount in the holy city of Jerusalem. Now, why do you think God put in the minds of the engineers at NASA, in collaboration with Lockheed Martin, to create the X-59 supersonic jet, which they claim will be ready in a year or so and will be capable of flying at 1,000 miles per hour? Do you really think God orchestrated this incredible technology so that people who want to fly from New York to Italy to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa can do so in half the time? Do you think the technology for flying taxis, which will be available within a year or so in some countries, was created so that people who live in Muncie and work in Manhattan could avoid the morning rush hour? It is obvious that all this was orchestrated so that the millions of people who regularly will be streaming to the Holy Temple from all four corners of the world should be able to get there as quickly as possible. And once they get to the airport in Israel, they shouldn't be stuck for hours in traffic to get to Jerusalem. They should be able to reach the Temple Mount compound in 12 minutes on a flying taxi. The Medrash even entertains the possibility of people going to Jerusalem for the early morning prayers at sunrise, then returning to their homes somewhere in the diaspora, and returning the same day to pray Mincha, the afternoon prayer we recite just before sundown. In any case, my dear shluchim, eventually your Chabad house in South Korea or Shanghai or anywhere else will be situated in the land of Israel. But that might take a little while. As the Rambam explains in the Laws of Truma, Chapter 1, Law 3, after the entire land of Israel with its full biblical boundaries is in Jewish hands, a Jewish king, in this case Moshiach, can begin to incorporate other lands to expand the borders of the land of Israel, and they too will acquire the same holiness as the land of Israel. It will take some time until this expansion will reach Alaska and Australia, but eventually it will. As King David says in Psalm 72 regarding the kingdom of Mashiach, V'yerd miyom ad yom uminohor ad afsei oretz. He will rule from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. I'm not sure how long it will take for this to happen, but regarding the conversion of non-Jews to become 99% Jewish, as we mentioned earlier, this will happen in the very early stage of the redemption, as explicit in the Talmud in Eruvin, page 43b. So to conclude, my dear shluchim, do not be concerned about your community of Jews leaving you alone as they all move away to the land of Israel. You will have tens of thousands of 99% Jews keeping you busy until the end of time. But before I let you go, I need to mention one more point. Do you know the simple meaning of the blessing God gave our forefather Jacob, which became the official anthem of the shluchim? V'hoya zaracha kafar ha'oretz, uforatzta yomo v'kedmo v'tzafoyno v'negbo. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. You shall spread out to the west, to the east, to the south, to the north. All the families on earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. Do you know the meaning of the blessing which was given to Abraham in Genesis chapter 22, verse 17? I will bless you greatly and increase your offspring like the stars of the sky and the sand of the seashore. Your offspring shall inherit their enemies' cities. The blessing of Ufaratsta means that eventually the Jews will spread out to all four corners of the world. It's not talking about the Jews being exiled to countries all over the world, because this is not a blessing. It is talking about the Jews voluntarily dwelling in all four corners of the world in messianic times. But why will Jews move out of the biblical boundaries of Israel to other places all over the world? Even though we mentioned earlier that Eretz Yisrael will spread throughout the world, nonetheless, what would cause Jews to leave the original location of the land of Israel? The answer is that the blessing to Abraham stipulates that the Jews will be as many as the stars of the sky and the sands on the seashore. Now, this is obviously hyperbole, because the stars in heaven are estimated to be 100 billion trillion. That's a 1 followed by 23 zeros. The sands of the seashore are estimated to contain approximately 8 sextillion grains. That's an 8 followed by 21 zeros. So the Torah is using a metaphor for huge numbers, but how huge? There is reason to believe that the blessing given to Abraham meant that eventually the Jewish people would outnumber the non-Jews of the world. This is alluded to in Isaiah's prophecy in chapter 54, verse 1. Ki rabim b'nei shemema mi b'nei be'ula. Sing, O barren woman, who has not given birth. Burst forth in song and rejoice, you who have not been in labor. For the deserted wife will have more children than the married wife, says God. The barren woman refers to the Jewish people whose numbers have been decimated by the Gentiles throughout the generations, and the married wife refers to the Gentiles whose populations have exploded. The population of the world is expected to peak at around 10 billion towards the end of this century, After that, it will start declining. The reason is not cultural, it is metaphysical. All the non-Jewish souls which had been meant to be born will have already been born. In contrast, there is an enormous amount of Jewish souls that have yet to be born, and that will need to descend to this world before the year 6000. In order for the Jewish population to grow that large, would not actually require any miracles. Let's do the math. We start our calculation with a population of 15 million. When Mashiach comes, all the Jews will follow the halacha. They will all get married by the age of 20 at the latest. This is explicit in the Rambam in the Laws of Marriage, chapter 15. That's the absolute deadline. You violate a command in the Torah if you pass the age of 20 and you are not married. Also, everybody will find their soulmate immediately because we will all have prophetic powers. In addition, every couple will be healthy and fertile, so they will have at least 6 children, which is normal in religious communities even today. Based on these numbers, ChatGPT gave me the following calculations. In 60 years, the Jewish population will reach 100 million. In 133 years, it will reach 1 billion. And by the year 6000 from creation, that's 213 years from now, in the year 2237, it will reach 14 billion. And by the way, I did not forget about Tchias HaMesim, the millions of Jews who will be revived from the dead after Mashiach comes, in addition to the above numbers. It's just that I don't know how to calculate the numbers. If one of my listeners can help me with this, please say so in the comments. There's obviously no room in the biblical land of Israel, even in its extended messianic borders, to support even close to that number of people comfortably. Remember, we don't have the option to build massive skyscrapers for residential purposes because we cannot use elevators on the Shabbat or Jewish holidays. And even if the Sanhedrin, the Jewish High Court, which will be stationed on the Temple Mount, will permit Shabbos elevators, many Jews will be reluctant to squash their families in apartments on the 100th floor in Nahariya when they can have a 5,000 square foot home on 2 acres in Pomona, which will halachically be part of Eretz Yisrael. Especially when every Friday morning they can take an air taxi to the airport, board a supersonic jet, and get to Jerusalem way before sunset. As the Jewish population explodes, Jews will be moving all over the world out of the original biblical lands to the extended domain of the Holy Land of Israel, which will encompass the entire globe. Based on the above, it is obvious that all Chabad institutions all over the world will need to remain in their place to accommodate not only the non-Jews, who will become 99% Jewish, but also to accommodate the physical descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Until next time, may Hashem be with you.